the Austin Design Week team this year, and you can connect with us and share your experience over the week by tagging us in on social media. And if you haven't already, we encourage you to join the Austin Design Week Slack workspace. And I'll put a link to that Slack channel in the chat. And that's where we'll share a lot of the resources after this, and we can continue the conversation as well. And there are free events all week. So today's only Wednesday. There's still, a couple more days left to go. So please check the schedule and join us for more. And we also just want to give a huge thank you to our sponsors. They are so generous in helping us make this possible this year. And finally, at the end of the event, we'll just put a brief survey in the Slack channel. And if you would be so kindly to take that, we'd love to hear your feedback and just see what you thought of the event. So now, without further ado, I'll give it away to Ami to start. And there's a list of our wonderful sponsors. Thank you for that.
Here are our sponsors: IBM Math Studio, the Zebra Frog, Label Collective, and Marketing 360. Thank you, sponsors. Well, thank you guys all for joining, and welcome to Ready, Set, Animate. I'm really excited to do this with you guys all today, and thank you for Austin Design Week for having me. Before we get started animating, we'll make sure everyone has some, if everyone joined late, make sure everyone has some paper. If you had like 10 to 20 pieces of paper, that would be optimal. As many as you have. If you have less, we'll make do. And something to draw with, and again, something indelible. We're going to do some really quick, fun exercises, and the whole part of us kind of jumping in here and doing this is making mistakes and learning stuff. So I don't want people worrying too much about making anything perfect. So nothing with an eraser, no erasers at all. We're just drawing with a marker, an art pencil, or a Sharpie, or a pen is fine. So whatever you have, and if you have some other fun stuff like some watercolor paint or some colored pencils and you want to do some coloring, that's great too. But if you just have a pen or a marker, that's enough for this exercise, and it's all we really need for today. And anyone, again, who just joined late, please download Stop Motion Studio. We're gonna have a little time before we get to that, so you have some time if it needs to load or whatever, but it's for iOS and for Android. It's a free version, and there's a paid version, which is like $5. If you like it, you can do the paid version later, but we can do the workshop just with the free version for now. So before we get started, my whole mantra is, I have a lot of mantras, which I'm going to throw out as we go, but anyone can animate. And I really believe that, anyone can kind of put pen to paper, create a few drawings and create animation. And we'll get into that soon. But first, what we're going to do is do something called a 4-minute burn. And that's a quick exercise I start all my workshops with. It's doing quick little compositional drawings. So I want everyone to draw, take a piece of paper, and if you have a sketchbook or a notebook that you draw on, you can do that too. You don't need to do it on a plain piece of paper. And I want you to draw sort of like a squarish rectangle. And if you have space for 2, it's kind of fun. Fit 2 on a page. And we're going to do one now, but we might do one later. Or you might do one later. And what we're going to do is kind of now take a quick look around the room. And by the way, as we go, if you guys have questions, please post them in the chat. Abby is monitoring the chat, and she'll let me know and call them out. I want to make this interactive and fun. I don't want this to be a lecture. So feel free, if you have questions or if you have thoughts, to put them in the chat as we go. And we'll be monitoring that and try to answer anything as quickly as possible. Anyway, so I want you guys to look around your room and see if you have something interesting you want to draw, whether it's like something on your kitchen counter, or you have a really funky, messy desk, or you have a roommate and a dog, or there's a cool view out the window to a Central European quaint town with a river running through it. Take a look around your room, find a cool composition. Imagine you're taking a picture looking through the aperture of your camera. And what we're going to do is do a very quick 4-minute drawing of what we're looking at, a 4-minute compositional drawing. And you guys might be asking me, why are we doing these little drawings when we're doing animation? And so there's a couple reasons. First of all, this is a great exercise. These quick 4-minute drawings we do, I do them like every day, and I started doing them in college. It really kind of helps you start to build those observational drawing muscles, kind of being able to kind of look through the, look around the world and like capture and sort of build the muscle between your eyes and your hands so that you can kind of see what you see in the world and be able to put that down on paper without thinking too much and without, being comfortable doing that. And that's really the key to learning how to draw and animate and capture the world. And again, we don't want to have not all you guys are illustrators or master drafts people, and you don't have to be. Anyone can kind of look around the world and put what they see down on paper. And it's also, as you begin to learn how to do animation and you want to build longer animations and whatever, it's not just the action you create on scene, but it's how you compose your frames, you know, and how they kind of compose from frame to frame. These are some storyboards from some famous filmmakers. Tim Burton is obviously a great one. He's an amazing illustrator too, but also Alfred Hitchcock with all his live action films had these really amazing storyboards, and he really thought about how he was going to compose each shot. So when we're doing these little drawings, we start to look at the world and think about what's the best way to represent this down on paper, basically taking the 3D world and putting it onto a 2D surface. So that's another reason we do this little exercise. So what I want to do, again, and here's another one of my mantras, happy accidents of this shit. When we do these drawings, we do them quickly and fast, and we don't really worry about the final outcome. It's about sort of the exercise of seeing the world and being able to put it down on paper and get comfortable with that. So I don't want you guys to worry about mistakes. If you do an errant line, don't worry about fixing it, going back, just keep going. I want you guys to really try to fill these rectangles with what you see as quickly as possible. I'm gonna give you 4 minutes to go. And again, just look around your room or wherever you are at, find a cool composition, hopefully full of like different shaped objects, things that are fun to draw. And I really want you to draw not just what's in the middle of the frame, but like hit the edges of your rectangle with your drawing. Draw what's in the foreground and the background. Try to get everything down real quick and then add some detail. So I'm going to give you guys 4 minutes, and I'll give you like a 2-minute warning halfway through. Let me get my clock up here. I should have done that before this whole jammy started, but I didn't. So sorry for that. Yeah, putting 4 minutes on the clock, and I'll give you a 2-minute warning. Any questions before we get going?
Yeah, we do have a couple of questions. So
Okay.
one person said just one square.
Yeah, just one for now. You can draw 2 on your page, and it's nice to have 2 on a page, and you can use that one for next time, but we're just going to draw one of them right now. So yeah, I want you to spend 4 minutes drawing in just one square. Anything
we're just
else?
drawing whatever's next to us or just anything, right?
Yeah, look around the room, look at something which is you think is cool, you know, and just draw that. Basically hone in on it and square it off like you were looking through the aperture of a camera and you're taking a shot. So frame it the same way, and we're going to just draw that for 4 minutes.
Okay, cool, man.
All right. Anyone else? We good? All right, cool. 4 minutes, start now. And again, I'll give you a 2-minute warning. And I'll repost my drawing playlist on Spotify in the chat for anyone who joined late. I just don't want to play. I usually play it over this, but in case it's getting broadcast somewhere, I don't want the Facebook or YouTube police coming after us about our music. Because that happened to me before and it was very sad. But, all right. And again, I'll give you guys a kind of a 2-minute warning as we get 2 minutes away. And I'm going to draw with y'all too. And again, don't worry if this just looks like nothing or if you think you're making mistakes. The whole point is just to do this and enjoy the process of looking and putting what you see down on paper. And really, like I do these all the time and I don't worry about how they turn out. Sometimes they're very abstract. Sometimes they look really awesome. And I'm like, oh, I should make a painting with this later. But, you know, it's really about the process of doing them and not making them super precious, but them being a part of a process of you kind of building those drawing muscles and being able to compose a frame. And that's really what these are all about. And sometimes it's fun just to draw these with like a really broad marker, like a Sharpie or something. So you can't really, it's not very forgiving. So you just kind of put your lines down and you live with them, and, you know, and sometimes that's really the way you kind of learn and, you know, to lose the kind of fear that you have about putting down something on paper. You're like, oh man, that doesn't look like the teapot or the coffee cup or my laptop. And that's okay. Like, and once you start to be able to see what those things look like, as opposed to what you think they're supposed to look like, that's when you start to be able to kind of really capture the world in a real way. Because too many times you have this preconceived notion about what everything should look like. How'd that feel for everyone? Anyone want to share their thoughts?
Felt good to just draw to be loose, you know, like just let the pen flow and not feel so restricted. I feel like when you have more time.
Hey, what's up, Dondi? I know that guy.
What's up, man?
How's it going?
Been a while.
Yeah. Yeah, it is kind of freeing when you don't have to worry about kind of the results, you know, and anyone seeing it. Now that I said that, everyone want to kind of hold up their drawings. I'd love to see them to the camera. Oh, these are awesome. Anyone done this kind of exercise before? These are great. You guys really filled up those frames. Has anyone done these exercises before? I guess you could post in the.
No, I did not.
No one? Yeah,
I've done figure drawings like this before, but it was the human figure.
okay.
This is cool. There's the frame fits a lot more in it.
Yeah, it's fun, and it kind of teaches you like, hey, this is an interesting composition. And if you do this a lot, like one a day, you'll start to be able to instinctively start to frame things in an interesting way. And also sometimes you'll be like, oh, this is really boring, this coffee cup and whatever, and make something kind of beautiful and interesting out of it. So it's really a great exercise to kind of get going. So these are great. Thanks for doing this. And now we're gonna get down to doing some animation stuff. I'm gonna give you a little bit of a spiel about myself real quick, and then we'll get into some exercises. So it won't be too much of me like yapping away. So let me go back to my deck real quick. And again, feel free to pipe in on the chat if you guys have questions, and Abby will kind of field those and let me know if there's anyone who has some questions, or if anyone's having any technical issues or anything, let me know real quick. So let me share my screen with y'all. All right. So a couple real tips when you do this too. Sometimes it's fun to use like a light marker or something like that and kind of block out your shapes really quick, and then go in with like a darker like pen or Sharpie, and then you can kind of like have your kind of shading and then have the line to kind of form and add that kind of detail. So if you're worried about, you know, wanting to get everything down and then adding some detail later, it's an easy way to kind of figure that out. And another thing is, especially for y'all, everyone here in quarantine, whether you live in a house or an apartment building, getting a little bit of a change of pace and a kind of change of scenery is always helpful. So go outside, you know, if you're outside is for you on your fire escape or on your stoop, or if you have a backyard or whatever, just and kind of start to notice the change of like light in different arenas and different places you're at, and see how that affects how you draw. And also being in a place where you can see things really far away and really close, as opposed to being in sort of a small space, and kind of notice those differences. So changing it up, and if you guys do these exercises every day, which would make me so happy, then and I think you happy too, then this is something to kind of try your changing your pace, get out of your home office a little bit here and there. But it's a great thing to do if you want to just keep your sketchbook or some paper at the side of your desk, and if you have a few minutes, you want to just take a break or wait for your tea to boil or whatever you need to do. It's a great little exercise just to kind of keep those creative juices going and kind of like take your eyes away from a screen for a few minutes as well. So real quick about me, my name is Ami, short for Amitai. I grew up in New York. I went to Parsons School of Design for illustration. I spent about 20 years being a art director and creative director in advertising, and worked at a software company too. And when I was in New York, I used to draw people on the subway all the time, going to and back from work. And it kind of taught me a new kind of quick way to draw, kind of picking up on this whole idea of having timing. You're sitting on the subway, you know, your train is bouncing around. Sometimes you're crammed up against people move, and people get on and off the train. So you basically look around and see who you can see. And like, you know, in New York on the subway is the kind of the greatest combination of all sorts of people you'll ever see anywhere in the world. So you just sort of look at a person, you look at a kind of a combination of people and say, what's important about this? What's interesting about it? And you try to capture that really quickly before that person gets off the train, or before someone stands in front of you or whatever, or they look at you and get creeped out and move, whatever happens. So I kind of started to develop a way of drawing really quickly and kind of focusing on some really key parts as kind of my practice of drawing. When I moved to Austin, I was like, damn, there's no public transportation to draw, and there is, but I never took it. So I kind of rediscovered the energy of people in the music scene here. And I started going to clubs all the time because it's so accessible, and just drawing the musicians, and not just the musicians, all the sceners and the people who work there, and all this different stuff and all the cool equipment. And again, kind of bring that same kind of like frantic, rapid approach to drawing. And I worked in tech for a while. So I started drawing all these conferences and creative talks. And actually one time someone hired me to say, hey, we like your drawing. We want you to come and draw our conference, and I'm like, oh, look, I can make money doing this. So a few years ago, I decided to stop working in advertising and software, and I started to do this full time. So now I started a company called Gonzo Viz. I do live drawing and at events, and I also do animation, and I also animate from the live drawings I do, and I'll show you some of that in a second. This is me painting at ACL. I kind of went around sketching the bands and then created this mural out of it. I do a lot of events. This is me at Creative Mornings. If you've ever been there, I do that every month, pretty much, capturing that live. Sometimes I draw big on paper. Sometimes I draw little in digital, or anywhere in between, kind of depending on the situation and what my final outcome is going to be, or just how I'm feeling that day. This is me and Killer Mike, just to throw that in there. Yeah, and then I kind of started to develop a kind of an animation style out of this. I actually went to see Iggy and the Stooges, and I started trying to draw Iggy, and he was moving so fast, I just ended up doing a ton of like really rough gesture drawings of him. And I'm like, oh, I could do something with these. And I kind of threw them together, and boom, I had an animation. And that's all you really need, is you really need just a few frames and you have animation. And then I would just kind of, when I started doing pitches for companies and brands, I would just take their logos sometimes, which are kind of boring, and just made them exciting by just like adding some motion. And it really takes very little to take something like still and kind of add some motion to bring like kind of the mundane to life. And that's kind of what my animation style is all about. It's like taking something sometimes which is kind of flat and static, and making it exciting and bringing it to life to add that sort of point of interest. So animation, what is animation? It's really the technique of photographing successive drawings of positions of puppets or models to create the illusion of movement when the movie is shown as a sequence. And that word illusion is really important, because yeah, all animation is a series of key flat frames, just like video. And what you really do when you start to get into animation is learn tricks to kind of fool people and kind of create this illusion that things are moving, even though you're just looking really at a series of static drawings. And one thing that's different really about when you do animation than if you're doing an illustration or you're doing a painting is you really don't worry too much about each frame and making that perfect and beautiful, because it goes by real quick. It's more about how all these frames live together in kind of the story they tell. So it's one thing, and I think those kind of quick 4-minute burns are a good example of teaching you to kind of get away from your drawing being super precious, but kind of being sort of more a part of a larger process. So I really want you guys to focus on that as we kind of go through these extras. I know some people like their drawings to be perfect and they can't show them, but really it's all about how they all work together in the motion, and you kind of have to change your mindset a little bit, and that's kind of a helpful way to go. Because if you're too precious in animation, you'll never get anything done, because it's a slower process. So there's 3 kind of main forms of animation that I kind of work in that we'll cover. Frame by frame animation, which is kind of traditional animation you guys are familiar with, just again, drawing. There's puppet animation, when you kind of take little pieces and kind of put them together to kind of create movement. It's sort of similar. It's the same concept basically as some stop motion, when you kind of you'll take a few pieces, you'll move it a little bit, or you can also do digitally. I basically take out drawings sometimes and I'll cut them into pieces and just kind of move them around. And then there's rotoscope animation, which is basically using shot film video as sort of a source template to kind of create motion from. And basically when I animate, I kind of use a lot of these different techniques together sometimes, depending on what I want to create. Frame by frame is kind of how it sounds. I, again, started drawing bands. I'd go and just do quick gesture drawings and create these kind of frame by frame animations, getting kind of laying one after the other. Sometimes you'd reuse frames, but they're kind of all kind of work together in a sequence. Yeah, I would just go see bands and sketch them real quick. And each individual drawing is kind of sketchy and quick, but when they kind of work together, they kind of create something really interesting. And what I would do actually when I go to see bands and then animate them is I'd kind of capture the live audio and then cut my animation to them. So it's kind of fun. It's a kind of I love playing with real audio and then cutting animation to it. There was that Robert Smigel thing that he used to do a while ago on Saturday Night Live, but it's always, especially when it has that sort of captured sound, it feels like the real world, and you change it into drawings. And it's as simple as sort of like the traditional frame by, this is a walk cycle, which is a traditional frame by frame. So you kind of basically, again, just draw each frame to kind of create the illusion of movement. And this is just a little bit of an example of something I did. you know, just a little bit of taking a few frames of drawings, it's about 8 frames, and just kind of cutting it together and making animation out of it. So it doesn't take a lot to kind of create something, but it's kind of a fun thing to do. So puppet animation, again, is kind of be really simple. It could be something where this is just a sketch I did, again, of Killer Mike. I have lots of Killer Mike sketches. And kind of just like made a little GIF out of it, just the crowd, just really like a 2-second drawing. And it could be a little bit more complex. This is something I did for El Pollo Loco.
1, 2, 3.
And, you know, basically this is a lot more finished illustration, but just basically taking the a few parts and kind of throwing them together and kind of creating this whole, you can create a lot with a little. So basically just not taking a lot. So we'll kind of you can play with all those things as well. And again, it's the same concept if you did cut paper and did stop motion. And then there's Rotoscope. And again, Rotoscope is kind of the technique of working with live video or film and kind of animating from that, but usually taking it as a guide or a source and then kind of doing something different with it. It seems like a new technique. It's been kind of popularized over the last few years, but it's actually, you know, with movies like Waking Life, American Pop was another one I liked from the 80s. But it's actually a really old technique that's been used since kind of the dawn of commercial animation and film animation. Disney used it a lot, especially if you look at the old sequences in like Cinderella and Sleeping Beauty. They actually tracked real life people dancing, and they kind of had a hard time capturing these kind of movements without that source. And you can see this is a frame from Peter Pan where they actually shot the live action, and the animators used that as a template to kind of create the motion that they did afterwards. So they didn't just trace it, obviously, but they used it as a kind of a guide, because sometimes it's hard to, they wanted a certain feeling and motion to it that is really hard to get just coming straight out of your head. And this is, I found this picture of this super old school rotoscope machine. Basically, they had a piece of film and they project it back onto this transparency. Right now you can do it on your iPad or something, which is a lot easier. But this is kind of basically the same idea, the same thing people have been doing for like 100 years. So those are kind of like the 3 main ways I animate, and we're gonna do some quick exercises, and we're gonna kind of use a combination of a little bit of kind of number 1 and 3, maybe not number 2 so much. Well, first exercise we're gonna do is an ambient animation. We're gonna try to take something really kind of mundane and boring and make it a little bit more exciting. So what I want you all to do is take about a minute and look around your room, your house, wherever, and find an object, a very simple object. You don't want anything too complicated because we're going to work pretty fast, but we're going to basically take something really boring and make it fun. So whether you have like an apple or orange or a teacup or something like that, nothing like too complex, because then you get hung up on all the details of it. Something really kind of simple. So take like a minute, look around, see what you can find. Any questions as we go?
Would a candle be something?
Hey, yeah, I mean, your candle is fine too. You know, I kind of prefer something sometimes a little bit more squarish in volume, just because it's a little easier to kind of wrap your frame around. But if you have a candle, that's fine, especially if it's like a fat candle.
Got a bunch of candles in front of me, like trying to think. Okay.
Yeah, that totally works, man. You can totally use a candle. All right, everyone got something? Anyone need more time? All right, cool. All righty, so what we are going to do now, as I share my screen, so ambient animation. So these are just some examples of things that I've done. When I was bored, I don't know if anyone remembers Cookie Puss back in the day in Carvel. There was a cake called Cookie Puss, so I took him and I don't know, I was feeling goofy, just to add a little bit of movement to it, just to make it kind of fun. This is when Stan Lee died. I just did these little quick drawings of Stan Lee, added a little bit of like, you know, superhero stuff in, and just kind of created like a fun, engaging animation. At least I thought it was fun and engaging. There's some inspiration I have. Anyone's ever seen the show Dr. Katz? That's that kind of was a show from the, I think the 90s, where there was a lot of talking, but they added all this sort of like a little bit of movement. They basically would just redraw the same character a few times to add this kind of movement, so it didn't seem still, because life really isn't very still when you kind of get to it, especially people. This on the right is Bill Plimpton, who's one of my favorite animators. And he, again, does a lot of this kind of ambient work where he just has a character, redraws it a few times, it creates this movement, and then adds these little fun details to kind of tell a little story or having some sort of visual gag. So I'm kind of showing you guys some possibilities because we're going to ask you to animate, and there's not really one right or wrong way to do it. It's kind of up to your imagination. So I want to give you guys some sort of just a little bit of examples of the way people do things like this. This is another great, really fun example of mine. This isn't actually a completely still frame, but this is from this thing called the Johnny Cash Project, which was created by this guy named Chris Milk, who I'm a big fan of. And he basically took a piece of video and allowed people to, on this web interface, to download frame by frame and repaint them. And so what he did is people would kind of repaint the frames in different ways. So there's this continuous motion throughout it, and it kind of holds it all together, but each frame is kind of eclectic and different. So when you're drawing your animations, you don't even have to draw them all the same way. You could draw the same thing, like if you have an apple, you could just draw it in 4 different ways, put it all together, and boom, you have like an animation. So we're gonna get on our animations real quick, but a couple really quick concepts about animation first. Registration, which is an really important thing when it comes to animation. So registration is basically when you have a series of drawings, right? And you want to make sure that the paper stays in the same place each time you shoot it, so that it's not kind of bouncing around like, let's see if I have a good example, like this, like crazy, because you want there to be movement in your drawing, but not in the paper, because that'll start to make your paper kind of crazy. So what you want to do is basically, when you're doing your drawing, when we're going to shoot it later, we're going to be very conscious about making sure that the paper is in the same place each time. And the only thing that's moving is what we draw on it. So just being conscious of that. And also when you go from drawing to drawing, being conscious of where you draw your character or whatever you're drawing on the paper is going to be important. And that'll become more obvious as we go through the exercise. Anyone's ever done printing or traditional printing or printmaking, they know how when you print different colors, the registration is very important, so they all lay on top of each other in the right way. It's the same concept with animation, making sure that each frame is kind of registered to each other as you go. Cool. And so one way we do animation, or I do animation actually, is a registration method, is by building this little DIY animation rig. It's basically a cardboard box. And what you do is you put your camera on top, you put the drawing on the bottom, and so you can keep putting the drawings in and they're in the same place, and it helps you do registration. We're not going to do that today because it takes too long and we'll never get through it, but this is something you guys, if you want to do more of this at home, it's kind of a fun, cheap way. You can buy an animation rig for a few $100s, but this is a really fun, cheap way to do it. You can cut it up in about 20 minutes. I have a video that Abby's going to drop into the chat, which has a step-by-step of how to make this, but it's pretty simple. Basically cut the sides out, put white paper on each sides for bounce, add a lamp, and then you kind of cut a hole in the top and boom, you have your animation rig. So Abby will drop the link to this YouTube video into the chat if you guys want to see how to do it. But for right now, for today, we don't really need to do this. It's just a fun way to do it. And it's also great for stop motion. You can put a little scene on the bottom there, put your camera on top, move things around and shoot it. It's kind of hours and hours of fun. If you have kids, it's great for them too. So registration, yes. One last kind of concepts, and for you, I imagine some of you work in technology or film or something, but one thing to be conscious of as you do your animations, not super important for right now, is aspect ratio. The standard HD video ratio is 16:9. That's side by side. So that's kind of if you're going to do something posted on YouTube, generally you want to stay in that sort of 16:9 aspect ratio. So when you start to do your animation and your drawing, you should be conscious of that aspect ratio. If you're going to post stuff on Instagram, squares are always best, but you can do any aspect ratio. So you might want to make your animation a square. So just being conscious of that. It's not really important for right now, but it's a concept moving forward just to kind of think about when you're making your animations. And another thing, when we're doing this, besides the stuff I just talked about, there's no wrong. So animation is both a hard and time consuming, but also very forgiving medium. So you can do it a lot of different ways. There's no precise way to do things. You can do it. You can have something which is a little rougher, and that's cool. That's the style you're going for. You have something which is very tight and very precise. That's cool too. And sometimes when you do things, you make mistakes and you learn from those things as well. So sometimes wrong is right, right is wrong, or right teaches you the wrong, or whatever. I'm kind of babbling, so I'll just keep moving. But just I think the point is, there's a lot of experimenting that goes in animation. You learn each time you do it. I think everyone learns it each time they do it. So I don't want you guys to get hung up. Anyone here can do some animation and make it cool. And once you guys have made an animation, it's awesome. So this ambient animation, we're going to start this. What we're going to do is I need you guys to get 4 pieces of paper. And we're going to do 4 90-second drawings. So what we're going to do is we're going to take whatever you guys picked out. Here's an apple. Draw it 4 times. Use kind of dark lines because it's going to be important to kind of be able to kind of trace from one to the other to kind of see where your thing is at. If you have a Sharpie or something like that, that's kind of great too. If you don't feel super comfortable drawing something freehand, I do this sometimes. I cheat. I trace from the screen. You can hold your paper up to the screen. Just don't press too hard through the paper because then you'll obviously cause some damage. And I don't want you to be like, oh, Ami, man, you told me to do this and now my computer's totally fucked. So don't do that. But yeah, if you have like a pencil or something or a light pen, you want to trace from something from the screen and then, draw it more, finish your drawing off the screen. That's cool too. But again, it doesn't really matter if your apple looks exactly like an apple. The point here is not realism. The point here is to kind of create motion. So it's not really important that you render a break apple. It's important you tell a fun story from one to the other or kind of create a fun visual effect. So we're going to do 4 drawings and we're going to trace it 4 times. Basically, you're going to draw one over the other. So they're kind of registered. Remember we talked about registration? They're kind of registered one to the other. But you can kind of characterize your drawing any way you want. You might want to, if you have markers or pencils or paint, you might want to color it really pretty a few times and see what that effect looks like from the different way you paint it each time. That's a cool option. If you want to make a character out of your object and tell a little story, that's really fun too. What kind of story can you tell in 4 frames? If you want to just kind of draw cool lines and see what the energy looks like from frame to frame, if you want to draw like a patterns and things like that and see how that moves, these are all options. There's no right or wrong, but it's really just up to your imagination what kind of story or kind of visual you want to kind of express. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 4, and here's some examples of other people's little drawings I have done on other little workshops. People took their lavender oil and had a little genie come out of the bottle. Someone just did a little fun water bottle. This was some kids I had in a workshop with, and they kind of did some fun stuff with oranges and bananas. And this little one kind of had a bugged out little stapler and had these little weird lines, just playing with like the lines and stuff. They kind of look like insects and ants, but they're really just playing with patterns and lines. So there's all sorts of cool things you can do. There's no right or wrong. And this is kind of the fun thing about this, since we're going to do really quickly and we're just going to do 4 frames, it's a quick exercise. So you could do it and be like, oh, this is cool. I want to add on to it. We can draw some more frames later. Or, oh, I haven't wasted that much time, even though I don't like it, but maybe I've learned something. I'm going to try it a little differently now. So you could spend an hour and do a whole bunch of these animations. So what are we doing? We're going to get back to it, start right away. One thing that's kind of helpful, again, back to the registration, if anyone has any tape, this is always a helpful thing to do, is put down a piece of blank paper, put the tape around it, and then you kind of have a frame. You don't have to do that right now when we get to shooting it. And you don't even really need to do that, but it's just kind of a helpful thing to do as we go. All right, so just to reiterate, what I want everyone to do is to have 4 pieces of paper, take their object, and we're going to draw your object 4 times. But again, you can draw it a different way. You can create a little character out of it. And we're going to make a 4-frame animation. So I'm going to give you guys 90 seconds for each frame of animation to do. And then at the end, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to kind of finish it up so that you have some time to go back and adjust it, or if you want to paint it or whatever. But I want to really kind of keep it quickly. So, because we don't want to worry too much about making it perfect. We really just want to think about the little story that we want to tell. Any questions before I get started?
Yeah, that's when I started. I mean, so you're saying each paper is its own drawing, right?
Yes. So yeah, we're going to have 4 drawings, and each of them is going to be basically a frame of animation. So you're going to draw say you have an apple, you're going to draw it 4 times. You're going to take 90 seconds for each drawing. And if you want to make it a character, you could draw little eyes on it, and then the next frame, the eyes would move a little bit, or its hands would jump out. So basically tell a story in 4 frames. It's almost like a 4 little frame comic book. or you could just redraw your apple 4 times and kind of paint it different and see how that looks when we put it together in animation. We're going to kind of experiment. I know this is a lot of you's first time animation. So basically what I want you to do is take an object and draw it 4 times any way you want. And then we're going to kind of put that together and see how it looks. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and so if I did like one drawing on a piece of paper and then second drawing different color or whatever, so it's say a pumpkin or whatever I got, so it's 1 pumpkin per page, right?
Yes, 1 pumpkin per
Okay,
page.
cool. And then if I were to draw that on a clipboard, do you think that'd be okay if it's steady paper on a clipboard?
Yeah, you can draw. You mean, yeah, sure.
Okay, cool. If I get just doing this, whatever.
Yeah. It's good just to be able to kind of see where your each of your objects is relative to the next one. So they're kind of in the same place on the paper. Unless you want them to jump around, in which case you can move them around. But it's helpful, I think, sometimes to draw it dark and then trace the next one and then redraw it so that it kind of stays basically the same size and the same place. So any other questions? Is it pretty clear? We're going to do 4 90-second drawings of your objects. You're going to have 4 pieces of paper. Then I'll give you guys like 3 minutes at the end to kind of finish up the drawings, and then we're going to shoot our animation and make some fun stuff. Cool?
Yeah. Also, Ami, just 2 questions for you from the
Sure.
chat. Someone wanted to know, is it okay if you do stick figures? I'm assuming it is.
Yes, you can draw whatever you want.
Yeah. And then the second question is, when it comes to the aspect ratio, there's the first number and the second number. What do they mean? When I think you put 6 and 9.
When I talk about aspect ratios, that's sort of like when I say 16:9, I mean the proportion is like 16 on the length and 9 on the top. Or if I do 1:1, it's like a square. Does that make sense? But we don't really have to worry about that one right now. It's just a concept to be conscious of as we move. We're probably just going to make GIFs out of these, and GIF can be really any aspect ratio. So, but if you want to make something which is kind of square, you can make it in a square. Make sure your animation fits in a square, but don't worry about that too much right now. We're just going to kind of draw as we want. That's more for like down the road. I just wanted to introduce that concept. That makes sense? Cool. And no, someone asked if they need to draw a frame around it. You do not need to draw a frame around it. This is just basically should be just sitting on your piece of paper. So 90 seconds. I see some of you started already and are cheating, but it's okay. 90 seconds starting now, and I'll give you guys, I'll tell you when we get to the next drawing as well. Let's see. And if we were doing this for real, we'd probably have like, you know, either like a light table or something that would make it easier to kind of look frame to frame. That's what professional animators use. Or they use very thin paper so they can kind of see through a little bit better. I mean, most of them actually use just a computer now, so that's how they do it. But, you know, it's a good concept, and a good way to practice is by doing it on paper. But that's kind of the way you kind of see. So, you know, if anyone gets interested, and feel free, I'm going to drop my my email address in the chat. If anyone has any questions about if they want to take this a little further, things to do and things they can get, you can buy a really cheap light table. That's not bad for like $30, $40, you know, and it's a really helpful tool if you're a designer as well, just to kind of be able to kind of look through, and it's great for crafts and everything as well. So it's a good investment. So something to think about, but for now, it's just kind of, you can just kind of draw it on paper, and there's some tools when we get to the animation to help register as well.
I'm cheating and there's nothing you can do about it.
Who's cheating?
Me.
Oh man, no cheating. I can travel across the world and say, what are you doing? And also,
It's not working anyway.
if anyone's using an iPad, that's kind of cheating. I love iPads and I do a lot of my animation iPads, but there's something really great about paper, about the mistakes and stuff you make when you use paper and markers and pens and stuff like that, that kind of teaches you a lot. And that's why we do it quick too. So you don't invest a ton of time on it. You just kind of do something, make it, and like, oh, this looks cool. And so this holiday season, when you guys are making those gifts to send out to people, you don't have to download something from the office or Parks and Rec or whatever. You can make your own gifts this time. So, and you can make them really quick. It could just be fun little messages. I'm actually doing a holiday. I do a holiday animation workshop every year, so everyone can make their animated holiday cards. So if anyone's interested, you can go to gonzoviz.com/remote workshops, and you can check that out. I'll be running one with Craft if anyone's here in town, although it's all remote, so it doesn't really matter. Or you can just make them on your own. About 50 seconds left, guys. And we're gonna go to shooting our animations. And remember, you guys could always, this is a simple concept, and you guys could take some time later if you want to keep going with this stuff. But we're going to kind of do something really quick, just kind of get something down on paper. About 30 seconds left. I know this is kind of a frantic pace. It's probably stressing some of y'all out, but I think once you get used to moving quick, it kind of, you know, as an animator, and Patrick and I are actually working on the new animated Linkletter movie. And you have to learn how to budget your time a little bit when you're an animator. You can't never have all the time in the world. It's always like a little bit of a frantic endeavor. So setting like a time frame, whether it's going to be like, I'm going to spend 2 minutes of drawing or 5 minutes of drawing, is good to be able to budget your time so you can actually kind of create something, because otherwise it's hard to sometimes actually get anything done if you, again, take too much time on each frame. And again, the importance of each frame is not quite what it is with like an illustration or something like that, where you're basically just going to look at a static one the whole time. So just keeping that in mind as you work, again, I don't want to rush anyone or give anyone like a heart attack here, but like, it's always good to kind of think about the time you take and how you can budget that so you can kind of create something. All right. And one thing that's also kind of important, and with 4 frames, it doesn't matter that much, but what I usually like to do, and here's I'm going to turn off this background because this is driving me crazy. So one thing I like to do, and especially when you get to longer animations, is on the bottom, say right-hand corner, just label start numbering them. So if they get into out of whack, you'll know which frame is which, so putting those numbers down there is going to help you kind of keep track of your animation. Sometimes if these are ambient and they're just kind of messing around, it doesn't really matter. But if you have sort of a linear story you're trying to tell, especially when you start getting into a lot of frames, if you don't number them, you'll start to lose track, and then you'll just be like in a world of pain.
Are we still drawing right now, or did it run out?
Well, we're done. We're done.
Okay,
but you guys can number them if you want. So, all right, cool. So now that we've drawn our frames, which is we've done the hard part really, actually, we're going to do the easy part, which is shooting them and compositing them. So has everyone for everyone who's got Stop Motion Studio, we're going to open that app up, and I will show you how we're going to shoot our animations. All right, go back to my presentation here.
Do you know if Stop Animation has can you save out like transparent backgrounds?
Transparent backgrounds? Not
Yeah.
really. I mean, we're going to shoot it flat, so it's not going to be transparent really per se. Just for the purposes of this. When you get more complicated, you definitely can do that. All right, so now we're going to shoot our animation. So we're going to open up our Stop Motion Studio. And I'm using an Android, so your interface might look a little bit different, but it should be pretty much the same. And the versions. So you're going to open Stop Motion Studio. And what you're going to do is it's going to give you this kind of gallery screen, number 1 here. You're going to click New Movie to kind of create a new movie. And then what it's going to bring you to this second frame, which you'll have this little camera on the top right. Click on the camera, and this will be where you're going to shoot your frames. So what you all want to do is, and I'll kind of show you this real quick, is take your first frame. And I've taken my first one. And I've made a little bit of a tape frame in my, and I'll show you. You can see I've kind of made this little tape frame so I can keep putting my paper down in the same place. It's not really necessary for this, but it'll be just kind of helpful to kind of keep things sorted. But if you haven't done that, that's totally fine. So I'm gonna put this first one down. I'm gonna open up my stop motion. To this screen where I have the little red button so I can shoot. I'm gonna stand up. I'm gonna center my my drawing in the frame. So try to use the top and the bottom of the paper to hit the edges of your paper, so it's kind of registered straight in the middle, and take your first shot. Now what you're going to do is you're going to remove your first drawing and you're going to put in the second one. But let me show you something real quick before we take the next shot. So after we take the first shot, you'll notice on the top left of this screen, there's this little number thing. It says 3 over here. Now this is called onion skin. And if you click on that, you're going to get, it's going to go from 3 to 5 to 1, 3 to 5 to 1. Basically what that does, it kind of ghosts the previous image you shot. So when you shoot your next one, you can see the position of the previous one. So you can line up your next frame to the previous one, so it doesn't kind of bounce all over the place. This is part of the registration we talked about. So I will show you sort of what I'm talking about. And there's also a grid on the bottom. If you click that button, you'll get a grid, and that kind of helps line things up. But when you're clicking it, and you can kind of see here, I can kind of see where the previous one is. It's kind of ghosted out, so that when I shoot my next frame, basically take my frame number 2, drawing number 2, and I put it down, and I shoot, I can kind of line up the second one with the first one. So when I shoot it, it's kind of registered, as we talked about before. It's the same kind of basic position and size. And click start. And then we're just going to keep going through until we shoot all of our frames. Sometimes my droid does this weird thing when it flips on me, and I don't know why.
There's a question here that says, can you please repeat how to shadow it?
Sure. Yeah. If you want to do the onion skin, there's a little button, and I'll show you again real quick. All right. There's a little button on the when you have this screen up, there's a little button on the top top left. See where it says 1? If you click that, that will open up the frame. So this basically, right now, you're seeing the last frame that I shot. And when you go to shoot it, it'll be up there kind of ghosted, so you can line it up. Does that make sense? Caleb, you're way ahead of everyone. Hold on. Does that make sense to whoever had that question? Oh, Kat. Kat, does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So once you are done, some people already jumped ahead, but once you're all done with this, what you're going to do is once you've shot all your frames, you're going to click that little arrow in the top right, and that will bring you back to your timeline frame. And this has basically all the frames that you've just shot, and that's represented in the bottom there. And if you click on the first frame and then you press play, it'll play for you. And this is my animation straight out the box. Me coming out of a can of coffee. Now if you press pause, and you'll see there's a little gear on the left side of your screen. Oh, first of all, there's a question mark there. If you click on the question mark, that'll tell you what every button does, so just FYI. But there's a little gear on the top bottom left. and that'll open up a lot of options for you. So when you open it up by default, it's set to the first thing, which is this little timer. You can see that little timer icon, and that little timer icon controls the frame rate. Is anyone here familiar with what frame rates are? I mean, some of you guys are definitely. Basically, a frame rate is how many frames per second you're seeing in the animation, how many drawings per second your animation is playing. Standard film has always been 24 frames a second. So when you see a movie that's shot on film, basically for every second of film you're seeing is 24. When you see video, it's generally 30. So for every second it's 30. But with animation, almost no animation is done with that many frames because it's time prohibitive. So generally you see animation in a movie or TV, it's either 15 or 12 frames per second. So it's basically what's called on the twos, like every other frame they do a new one. For the purposes of these really short animations, we're probably going to use even a slower frame rate because that will go by really fast. So this one right now, by default, it's set on 5, and you can control that here. You can see it's controlled by 5, but you can also play with it and change. You can move it to 10 or 9, whatever. And just, it's kind of a taste thing for now and kind of seeing, like, do you want it to happen really fast? Or do you want it to happen, you know, a little bit slower? You can go down to like 4 or 3. I mean, it kind of, again, depends on the nature. If you have sort of an ambient animation where you're just kind of showing like, you know, just kind of a decorative thing where seeing the movement between one and the other, then a faster frame rate might be cool. If you're telling a story with only 4 or 5 frames, then you probably wouldn't want to use a slower frame rate. So play around with that for a second. Again, once you get it to the place you want. And another thing you can do, if you want to sort of repeat your frames or hold on a frame, if you click on a frame like this, just tap on it, you'll get this box that'll come up, and you can do you can basically copy and paste frames and frames. So basically, if you wanted it to kind of ping pong, go back and forth, you could copy the frames from the beginning on the end. If you wanted to hold longer on one frame, you could copy and paste that frame a few times. If you want to move them around, you can move them around too. So this is not like, Stop Motion Studio is not like the ultimate tool for animation, but it's a nice little intro and refresher. And so you can kind of do these fun little things. Also, if you have the paid version, you can add audio and some other effects. I encourage you guys too to try this and go through some of the other things. You can change sort of the aspect ratio of your animations as well and other things. But for right now, we're just going to kind of play with a frame rate and the frames. And once you kind of got your animation as you want, click that little arrow on the top left, and you'll be back on this gallery screen. First thing you want to do is tap on the name of your movie and rename it because it defaults to My Movie. So like if you're sharing this or whatever, it's just going to be, if you guys want to send it to me, and I encourage that because I love to see people's work, I'll just get a lot of My Movies. So change it to a title or name it your name or whatever you want, but just change the name is a good practice. And once you do that, what you can do is kind of hold it down. You can hold down on it and it'll give you options on the top, a share option. And if you click on the share, you'll get the option to share as a movie, an animated GIF, all the images, which will just spurt out all the images you shot, and these other two, flipbook and project. We don't have to worry about those. Usually what I do is export these as a movie or an animated GIF. For the purposes of this, it's just kind of fun to save it as a GIF. So if you click on animated GIF, and then you'll get share options. And so you can either email it out or you can save it to your device. I will suggest if you're on an Android and you want to share this, that you save it to your device first and then share it out, because there's some glitch with the droids that they don't attach when you send it. But and then you have your animation. Anyone want to hold up their animation to the screen? Let me see it. It's hard for me to see.
I would, but I did everything on my phone.
You can hold up your phone. You don't want to do your phone?
I am on my phone.
Oh, I see.
How do you make it loop?
Because I did it on my computer.
Oh, so there's an option inside. Usually it defaults, but sometimes on some people's phones it doesn't. So if you click on,
Can I upload it in this conversation?
yeah, send it to me. Send it to. I'll put my email address into the chat again.
You can also post it on the Austin Design Week Slack channel there as well. That link is in the, yeah.
But I love it.
Yeah, right.
So definitely send them to me because I love to see them. Anyone wants to send a share with me, I love it. So please do. Oh, so the person who asked about looping, if you click that gear again, the last little option on the gear is playback, and you have the option to loop it, play it once or whatever. Sometimes it defaults and sometimes it doesn't. And someone asked about cropping. You can change the aspect ratio, and that should crop it. But in the paid version, I think there's more options for that. But I usually export them and then we'll kind of crop it somewhere else. But you can crop it using the aspect ratio. So it's not really a precise crop tool in this app. This is a kind of a limited app, but it's not the free version. But it's just fun for making little animations.
You see it? I don't know if you can see it.
It's awesome, Danny G. I like that little. It's awesome. I love that dumbbell. You guys are awesome. I don't know why you're taking my class. You guys are already aces at this.
Thank you.
These are great. Awesome.
No, you actually gave me a lot of good information.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, please share these with me. It's hard for me to see everyone's because there's a lot of people in here, but I'd love to see them. So please share them with me. Someone asked if they filmed it in portrait rather than landscape. So it exported horizontally. I mean, you can. I think I would just shoot it again. Really, it takes 5 seconds to shoot it again, so I'd almost do that rather than fool around with it. Anyway, these are great though. Thank you guys for sharing, and please send them to me.
Can you change the name again?
So when you're in the menu screen, the main gallery.
Yeah, that's
where.
Okay.
Just click on the name, tap on the name, it'll come up an option to change it. Diego, that's awesome. Batman, is your Batman sitting on your table, or did you just draw it from your head? These are great. All right, awesome. So we have about 20 minutes left. You guys want to make another animation? Anyone? All right.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. I'm gonna breeze through this real quick because we don't have that much time. But let me just jump really quickly back to my my deck here. All right, so our next, we're actually going to do something really fun. Is we're going to do portraits of our neighbors. So instead of drawing something inanimate, now we're going to have a fun with somebody, drawing people. And there's a couple ways you can do this. Again, we kind of talked about the different ways you can animate a sort of inanimate object, make a character out of it. You could do just something kind of ambient. So with this, there's a few options to do too. Again, with people, there's some people have talked about doing stick figures or whatever. There's the option to do gesture drawing. So basically what you want to capture, the story you want to tell, is kind of the gesture that someone's moving. So you basically want to do really quick drawings, and instead of focusing on details like their face or what they're wearing or making a character, you just kind of look at their positions and think about and see how that all works when you start to move it together and kind of create a nice movement, a little movement animation, gesture animation. The other option is to kind of make a character out of whoever you're drawing. So instead of focusing on making details of the movement, you just kind of look at them and hone in on a couple of little details. Like this is from one of my favorite animations. If anyone's ever seen those, oh, what are they called? No, totally blanking. Anyway, they're funny. I'll tell them. I'll put them in the chat later if I remember. Basically just focusing on, say, someone's face and be like, if they have funny glasses, or if you looked at me, I have glasses and a beard, and you can make a character out of me, and maybe my eyes are bugging out or something like that. So you could either focus on the gesture and the movement, or you could focus on, some little characteristic that you kind of sort of accentuate or exaggerate and kind of, again, create a character out of your person and tell a little story or just make a funny little movement or whatever you want in 4 frames. So we're going to do another 4-frame animation. And what we're going to do is, let's see, in the interest of time, okay, we're going to do 90-second drawings. Let's see, we're going to do 60-second drawings. And if your last name starts with A to L, you're going to do 4 quick poses. And so what I want the other people whose name starts from M to Z is to pick somebody here, spotlight them, and you're going to draw them 4 times. Does that make sense? We're going to do 4 drawings again, 4 60-second drawings. And so I'm going to set the timer, and then we're going to switch. So the people whose last name starts M to Z, then we'll switch, and then you'll pose. But so pick someone you find. You don't have to communicate or tell them. And this is, if people don't want to turn on the cameras, then you can use someone whose camera's on. Most of you all have your cameras on, so that's cool. So pick someone, and you're going to draw their poses. And everyone's going to do 4 60-second poses, including me. So if you want to draw me, I'm a narcissist, so I like to see it.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everyone?
You use up the whole page, 16 by 9 kind of idea.
Yeah, you can use the page the same way as you did before, as much as the pages you want. Don't worry too much about the aspect ratio. Even if you do it vertical, it doesn't really matter. We're just making GIFs. So the GIFs are can be really any size. And I really want you guys to focus on the animation. I just shared that before so that you guys kind of had an idea, moving forward, but it's not something which is too much to worry about right now. All right, so everyone ready? Everyone who's A through L, you guys are posing. That's what I said, right? Okay, everyone A through L, we're gonna do 4 60-second poses. M through Z's, you guys are drawn. Remember to spotlight somebody and just do them 4 times. You guys all know how to spotlight? Is anyone? So in the if you roll over someone's square on the top right, there's the drop-down menu, the 3 dots, and there's an option for spotlight. Oh, can you not do that? Oh, I shouldn't be doing that. Hold on.
So A through L is going to be posing.
Yeah, A through L is going to be posing. M through Z is drawing. Is everyone good? Can everyone spotlight somebody?
Yes.
Or pin them? Sorry, my bad. It's not
There we
it's
go.
spotlight for the host. It's pin for everyone else.
All right, pin.
All right.
There we go.
So we're going to start right now. 4 60-second poses. Ready and go. I should put my glasses on. Thank you, Sherry, for clarifying.
Don't get mad.
Don't make me laugh. All right, pose number 2.
Oh my gosh.
All right, pose number 3.
Oh my gosh. I'm behind.
And you guys can have some time at the end to finish it up.
This is how it feels to be a model when you're in figure drawing class, I guess, huh?
Yeah, exactly like this.
Oh, my arms.
Bad pose, huh?
Yeah, imagine if you had to hold it for like 20 minutes.
I don't know how they do it. I'm having a hard time keeping my neck facing the
Oh,
ceiling.
I thought you were taking a break and drinking, and then I thought,
Well, it's an empty
all right,
Coke.
pose number 4. You're designing the story for them, Dondi.
I'm trying to be creative here. Using a prop.
All right, cool. That's it. 4 poses. Now let's everyone who was drawn, it's time to pose. Everyone who was posing, it's time to draw. And the one thing about these poses is they're a little more forgiving as you're on your placement on the page as compared to the ambient one, because you're going to be, especially if you're moving a lot, you'll be able to kind of get away with a lot of movement without it looking weird. It's just kind of a different sort of take on things. So everyone pick someone they want to draw. Let's see.
Catherine, are you drawing or posing?
Which Catherine? I
You.
know I'm drawing now. I was posting.
Damn. Who's posing?
I feel like everyone turned off their camera.
I'll
And
pick you.
Z. And through Z.
I'll pose again just in case anyone wants to join us. So anyway. All right. Everyone ready?
What was the letters after that you pose at?
Well, if you posed, then it's time for drawing. You're drawing now.
Okay.
Oh,
All right.
yeah. Thank you. And
All right, we're starting now. All right, next pose. All right, next pose. And a little bit of a cheat tip for you guys when you're doing this on Zoom. You can always screenshot the person if you want to go back later. It's a cheat I shouldn't have told you about, but that's how it go. So yeah, so third pose now, start.
Mhm.
All right, last pose.
Mm.
And Abby, I don't know, do we turn into pumpkins at 5:30 or can we go like 2 minutes past?
We turn into pumpkins, unfortunately.
Oh man. All right, so we have like 3 minutes left. So I'm gonna have to, this is all to shoot, the process is the same when we do the shooting and then exporting and making the GIFs. It's just you have person. Now, what's a little bit different is that the order, you can play with the order too. So do a lot of playing with the copying and pasting. You can go back and forth. You could also do some things. If you have the paid version, I think you can flip your drawings. So you could copy and paste them and flip them. So you end up with 8 drawings as opposed to just 4. So you can play with that and play with the sequences. And please, everyone, I know I said this before, but I really mean it. I love if people send them to me. That's last pose is up. So please finish up these drawings and make your GIFs. Any questions before we go? We have 2 minutes.
Yes, I do. What format did you export the animation to? Was it a GIF or?
If you're going to send it to me, just send it as a GIF. Yeah. You can send it as a movie too. The movie makes a QuickTime movie. So then but the GIF will
Yeah,
loop.
that one will loop probably.
Yeah. So GIFs are easy. Any other questions before we go? Any thoughts? I'd love to hear any feedback.
This was fun.
Yeah, this-
Thank you.
Beautiful. I love it.
And honestly, guys, like this was just a quick thing to show you. You guys can play with this as much as you want, draw on more frames, making back and forth, start to play with more things. So this is really just a nice starting block. But if you guys want to make quick animations, as you can see, you can make an animation in like 5 or 10 minutes and do something fun, and they always come back a lot cooler and funner than you even think they're going to be. So motion is fun. So I really appreciate you guys all joining me today. Hope you had fun. I'm glad you guys, hopefully people learned something and this will start you on the path. And do those 4-minute burns too. Those are a really fun thing to do every day. Keeps me sane in this little insane world we're living in right now. So thank you guys so much. And again, also feel free to email me if you have any questions on this stuff, and please send me your GIFs and your drawings and stuff too. So
Send it to you. We just download it and email it to you, right?
yeah. If you're on an iPhone, you can kind of just do share and send it to the Gmail, but with the Android, that some reason it doesn't connect. So yeah, if you save it to your phone and then email it to me as a GIF, that should be great. I appreciate it. And if you guys like it,
Computer.
sorry?
It's on my computer.
Oh, okay. You can email it to me that way too, yeah, you can email it to me. And if you get the paid version, there's more options as far as like messing with things too. And it's like $5. So it's kind of worth it, I think, if you want to play around with this thing. So it's just got more options. You can add audio and stuff like that as well. So awesome, guys. Well, thank you and enjoy the rest of your week. Hopefully you guys need some cool stuff and we'll see some more and hopefully catch you all again soon. Thank you.
Thank you for joining.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care, Ami.
Bye, guys.
Thanks.
Bye.